And the idea is to split the secrets. If someone is making a mistake or a bad actor is getting to one of these mini secrets, they cannot do anything with that. You can even just deploy money into a smart contract and everything was fine, but then there is like an attack going on, your money will get drained. You need to be very careful on the actions you're doing there. You need to understand the context. This market is cruel sometimes, okay? You can do all the right things, but you miss one thing and that's all.
Managing digital assets at scale requires infrastructure capable of handling custody, governance, compliance, and execution across multiple blockchains. Our guest today is Bentzi Rabi, co-founder and CEO of Utila, an institutional digital asset operations platform designed to help fintechs, payment providers, and financial institutions securely manage and build on digital assets. Bentzi, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for hosting me.
And yeah, so let's start with your own story. What initially brought you into digital assets?
Sure. So actually, chess. um, I used to work around more than 10 years ago in a cybersecurity startup in Tel Aviv. That's where I'm from. And one day, I was just walking back home and I saw people playing chess in some, I don't know, it looked like a store or something. A week after, on the same day, I saw them playing again, and then I just decided to join them. And later on, I just found it's actually the Bitcoin embassy in Tel Aviv, which was hosting like chess games in some evenings. So I would say that's like when I started actually just more meeting more people from the industry and getting more educated about what's going on. Till then, I was mostly familiar, I would say, with Bitcoin and Ethereum. But then I also learned about some new interesting ecosystems, like Cardano. I think back then it was like one. It was very interesting for me as well. Later on, with DeFi coming in, Chainlink white paper, etc. So I think I was always mostly interested in, I would say, the application side, the infrastructure side. And fortunately, I was not a big buyer of digital assets back then. But I can set it all already around 2011 when I was serving in elite intelligence unit at the IDF. I had some friends who were actually mining Bitcoin in their sleeping room. So I would say that's the first time I heard of Bitcoin. And I have some good friends who got involved pretty early, but also they made their own like pizza deal. Okay, so I have
Mhm.
bought like a vacation for him and his wife with Bitcoin. I think it was 2013 more or less, and he was very excited about it. But me deeply like becoming more involved, it started only like 5 years after that. And starting Utila was in 2022. Back then, we started looking at the area of digital assets that me and Sam were like pretty familiar with. And we saw like a big opportunity there, and we started the company.
Interesting. But yeah, I think the timing was really good because the demand was at that point it was obvious that yeah, there is a demand in such solutions. But what problems did you repeatedly see institutions struggling with when trying to operate in crypto, and what convinced you of founding Utila? Can we delve just a bit more into that?
Sure. So I think when you look at organizations operating on chains, so first of all, they need to take care of security, which is like something that is there from the early days of crypto, right? Like how do we secure private keys? How do we make sure that no one is stealing the keys or stealing the funds, which sometimes not need to be necessarily connected to stealing the keys? How um, do we make sure that we are not doing mistakes operationally, right? So we can be very safe when it comes to our keys, and when it comes to general access to our system. But what if the right person is just doing a transaction to the wrong address? Okay, Um, that's another problem. So I would say like one problem which has been there from day zero of crypto, and especially when institutions. So day zero was key management, okay, and then day one when you started see teams operating um, in crypto like organizations. You also need like operational security, because key management was mostly relevant for like a single user, okay, but when you have a few user, key management by itself is not enough. You need actually roles and permissions and approval flows and limits, like the same way you have in your banking systems right today, or every other system when you touch money. um, and I think that's like the second evolvement of wallets. Another evolvement is multi-chain. Okay, like okay, Bitcoin was mostly Bitcoin and Ethereum. Crypto was mostly like Bitcoin, Ethereum, some other ecosystem. In older days, you had like wallets that are specific for ecosystems. But as the market became much more like multi-chain, you start to have an operational challenge. Okay, now I need to work with five different wallets. For I have a bit wallet, I have a multisig for Ethereum, I have another wallet for Solana. Like I don't have anything that is like having all of my assets, protocols, blockchains under like one umbrella. I think that was like another challenge that came after. Okay, um, all those challenge were already addressed, I would say, when Utila was started by another wallet providers that were focusing on organizations. Okay, so it started 2022. You already had unicorns actually solving key management, solving operational workflows and policies, solving multi-chain support. So I would say these things were solved, but where we saw gaps, um, and that's the reason why we decided to start Utila, is that actually crypto was moving or shifting in a way. And the what we saw is that if till then the main use case for institutions, and also the word institution in crypto is a bit misleading sometimes, because people they just imagine Bank of America or JP Morgan, like large bank, but institution can also be in crypto just a small hedge fund of five people just managing large amounts of volumes, right? So what we saw is that crypto till then was heavily focused on tokens being traded by asset managers, market making firms, etc. And that's where all of these like wallet providers for organizations were built for. Okay, so they were built for a use case where there is some new ICO, there is um, um, some other like token opportunity that I want to invest on. There are like some centralized exchanges where I can get liquidity, right? And I want my self custodial wallet in the middle, and I also want to make sure that no one from my team is like stealing the funds, the keys are not stolen. Like I have things at self custody because exchanges can have a risk, like everyone saw what happened with like FTX, etc. And that's where the solutions back then were focused on. Okay, so they were focused on solving these kind of like challenges in the market. Around 2021, DeFi summer hit it, um, and we saw the market moving into actually from trading tokens to applications being built on chain. Okay, so digital assets became not just an asset, but actually like a code where you can take like a financial instrument and copy it to on chain and actually enjoy the benefits of blockchain, right? Lending, borrowing, staking, etc. And our assumption was that this new wave is going to be massive in a way that every fintech company will become in the end a blockchain company. Okay, we saw that having something trustless that operates 24/7 is something that is today missing in the world. Okay, like every kind of financial instrument is built on you know old rails that are still
Mhm.
heavily on people that needs like to to call someone in the phone or do things manually. These people, they work between 8 to 4. They don't work in weekends. And when you started actually, a lot of workflows being moved on chain, for us, it made a lot of sense that every kind of like financial uh, interaction in a way will move to chain. Now, when you think about wallets needs, so the needs are different, okay, compared to the needs of an asset manager trading with token, right? Like the needs are, okay, we need actually wallets that can build for large scales of wallets and transactions, because applications are not about having just 5 wallets and then just dealing with centralized exchanges and doing like 10, 20, 30, 50 transactions a day. It's actually building like a new bank or a new lending protocol or a new staking protocol on chain, which actually requires a much more scalable infrastructure, if that makes sense. Requires much more like API focused solution as well. Requires a lot of capabilities around how we manage gas, right? Because building digital assets operations in scale requires also like a lot of things around how we handle gas management across like different blockchains, how we can interact securely with smart contracts, right? Where we are building actually applications, because that's like a new area for risk, and we have seen just like last week what happened like with drift, right? Like you do need actually to be more careful as you are like going deeper in blockchain. And we said, okay, like looks like there is a new evolvement of the market. The market is moving from tokens traded in centralized exchanges to applications being built on chain, where today it's mostly things around stable coins, of course. That's like the number one use case that we are seeing right now, tokenization of real world assets and DeFi in general. And we didn't see anyone who was building actual institutional grade wallet solution that is focused on this. Okay, this was pretty new back then. And that's the bet that we took, that we want to be the leading one for this like new evolvement of the market.
And when it comes to MPC valid technology, right? So it's a core component of Utila's platform,
Right.
basically enterprise grade MPC valid technology. So for listeners who may not be familiar, could you please explain how multi-party computation key management works and why it has become the preferred security architecture for institutional customers?
Correct. So I will try to make it simple.
Okay.
And the basic idea of MPC is okay. So let's think about secrets. Okay. In general, the main, I would say, challenge today for keeping secrets is our nature as humans, and not to be very careful sometimes. Okay. I think you can have the best systems, but once a person is just forgetting like to do like one small thing, like I think this can lead to a major leak. And the general idea of MPC is coming and saying, okay, like we never want to keep the secret in one place. Okay, so we want actually
Okay.
to remove the risk of like having like a failure being done by a human that actually expose the secret. And the idea is to split the secrets into a few mini secrets, that, let's say, if someone is making a mistake or a bad actor is getting to one of these mini secrets, they cannot do anything with that. Okay, you can only do thing if you all have all the mini secrets in the same time.
Mhm.
um, the idea of MPC is basically coming and saying, okay, we split it into a few mini secrets. It can be two, it can be 200. Okay, and it's like multi-party. Multi-party can be any kind of number. So MPC is like a general term for splitting, the secret into X, where X is at least two parts. Um, and in order, and in this case, of course, it's a private key, right? So the idea is like to split in a way the private key into X parts. Each part sits in a different location. Okay, it can be a different organization, it can be a different cloud, it can be a different hardware, it can be, you know, and in order to sign a transaction, so there is um, like a calculation that is being done, okay, just to make it simple. And the result of this calculation, let's imagine, should be 7, okay? So I'm doing calculation with like one secret, I get 5, and I
Mhm.
do another calculation with like the second secret and I get 2, and then basically I get like the full answer, which is 7, and then I can sign a transaction. So the idea is actually you can sign a blockchain transaction by working on two different mini secrets that are not sitting together, but it looks like they sit together because you actually can sign a
Mhm.
transaction. So imagine I use one secret, then I use the second secret, and then I can actually have the full secret without really having them never sitting next to each other. Okay, so I think that's the idea in general. Now, why it's interesting? So I would say there are a few things. First of all, it's considered to be super safe because in this case you don't really have one place that if this place is attacked, um, the secret is exposed. Actually, in this case, an attacker needs to attack different places in the same time. Why I say in the same time? Because there is also like a refreshing model behind that uses refreshing the secrets all the time, which means that there is a window, a time window that you need to get all the mini secrets inside this time window. And if you don't get all the mini secrets in this time window, then the secrets, let's say they are refreshing, and then you cannot do anything with the combination of a mini secret from an old time zone to like a new time zone. So that's like, one main thing. There is never like a place where the secret is being old and in fully. Um, the second thing is that basically MPC is great for supporting multi-chain. The key mechanism is not sitting on chain like a multisig. It's actually sitting off chain, which means that it's much easier to make it work on different blockchains. Okay, so that's why when you look at MPC providers, they support multiple blockchains under one umbrella, like with different elliptic curves, right? Like support like Solana and Starknet and EVM chains and Bitcoin, okay, under the same hood. When multi-sig solutions, they are much more like heavily focused on like one ecosystem. Okay, you have like Gnosis, say for EVM chains, and you have squads for Solana. So basically, it's very difficult to find a mechanism that is multi-sig based, that can be multi-chain, and it can be also pretty expensive if you operate in large scale, because when you operate in large scale, then basically you need to deploy a smart contract on every wallet, which can be pretty pricey, right? So we also saw a lot of organizations actually using multisig, and but when they reach large scale, it's actually becoming pretty pricey. Another thing is when you move the key management system to off chain, you can actually code next to it and add any kind of logic that you want
Mhm.
on top of the key management system, right? So this is actually something that enables you to enforce very flexible operational rules that you want to have inside your organization when it comes to users and roles and approval flows and limits, which is something that is very difficult to do when you are just using like a multi-sig system that is very basic. It just, okay, the only rule that you can set is you need 2 out of 5, okay, like M out of N. You cannot do anything
Mhm.
like more flexible, more smarter. And for institutions, having a robust policy engine as well is considered to be super important next to key management, okay? Now, when you look historically until 2017, 16, like the main institutional providers were built on multi-sig. And since then, like I would say the first company who actually did it is Unbound Security by Yehuda Linder. He's a famous cryptographer. They got acquired by Coinbase a few years after. And they were like the first that actually came out with like, okay, let's take MPC, which is like not something new in the world. It's like actually cryptographic idea from the 70s and implement it for digital assets. And I think back then MPC was relatively new and there were like a few companies like Curve and Fireblocks that started like with this. Some of them got acquired because organizations were actually looking for people who understand MPC, which wasn't standardized at all. And I would say today MPC is much more like common. It became a golden standard because organizations see all the benefits that I just mentioned. There were no hacks so far. And today I would say that every big institution is mostly looking for an MPC kind of key management system.
Let's stop for a minute. Here's a brief moment of context for those who may not know me. My name is Nasib Fathi. I'm a scientific researcher in the blockchain space, and I work with executives and organizations as a growth and media professional. My focus is crypto at the intersection of institutional finance, market structure, and regulation. You are watching the NFK podcast, where these topics are discussed through conversations with people shaping the development of digital assets space. Another key aspect of the platform is your governance framework, right? So institutions operate with strict internal controls and approval processes. Now, how does Utila translate the traditional governance structures, as you mentioned, into blockchain-based asset operations?
So basically, the policy engine is one of the most um, challenging product work that we needed to do at Utila, because when you think about blockchain, you have a lot of types of actions that you can do that are not necessarily only like transferring funds, which makes things much more complicated. Um, and you also have a lot of structures that are also similar to the traditional world where you actually need to create, like, let's say, the same version of what you have in your banking system as well, right? So first of all, when you look at, and when we design our policy engine, actually we looked at like policy engine in like bank accounts, like organization non-bank accounts, or um, um, corporate banking solutions, like Brex, etc. We're also looking like on how they implemented like their own policy engine, like any kind of system that is managing money with a few people who have an access to this money actually was like a good benchmark for us when we started working on our policy engine. The first thing that you need to think about is like, okay, having the idea of like roles and permissions, right? Like you do want to have people who have admin permissions, but you also want to have people who can just be a viewer. Okay, if you are like an accountant or something, or someone who is in the middle who can initiate transactions, even sign them, but this person cannot be an admin, right? So also you need to make sure that there is no one admin that is acting as a bad actor, right? And is doing like whatever they want. So you also need like to set policies on admins. So I would say like the basic, piece of our policy engine is how you manage roles and permissions inside the organization. The second part is how you act on groups of people or groups of wallets or groups of blockchain addresses, okay? Because in many cases you you do want to enforce rules in a way that you will not need now to create like a rule per every person or a rule per every wallet. You need the idea of groups. The third part is, okay, how do we actually support different types of interactions with the blockchain? Okay, because maybe in the old days, and this is also connected to what I mentioned before, that traditional players were built mostly for transferring tokens, right, between like self-custody wallets, centralized exchanges, etc., where the main action was transfer. Okay, so I just want to make a rule on if Nasib is transferring funds, I need Bentzi and Ron to approve it, etc. But what about calling a smart contract? Okay, which is like a relatively new thing. I also want to enforce things there, right? What about actually calling a specific function in a smart contract and a specific parameter in a smart contract? Because smart contracts in general are a new risk um, um, area for organizations, and you must be able to set like the right policies when it comes to interacting with them. Um, so that's like, like one great example. There are a lot of issuers in the market today. Okay, like we see organizations starting to issue their own stablecoin. Okay, so we've seen Klarna recently, Western Union. We expect to see many others doing the same. So they also need like the same kind of policy engine on minting and a stable coin or burning a stable coin, because they want to avoid a situation like what happened with like PAUSD a few months ago, that you mint by mistake like trillions of dollars of your stable coin, right? So that's like the third aspect of what we did, which is, okay, how do we create a solution with like the right like roles, permissions, approval flows, limits, like all the basic stuff that you have, but also in the way that you can support any kind of interaction with the blockchain, which is not only like transferring assets. Okay, and that's why we built also like support for sending rules on like contract calls and other actions like sign type data and like minting and burning and even talking in the function and parameter level. Um,
Mhm.
and I would say this is like actually a mission that will never stop. Okay, because as the market is evolving, you have new innovations usually come with like new security risks, and a main and one of the main ways to mitigate this risk is actually being able to set the right policies for these new innovations.
There was this project that you worked on or with was called Karatage, right?
Yeah,
Or yeah. It's a hedge fund, right? Managing complex portfolios across multiple blockchains.
correct.
So where does operational friction appear first for multi-strategy funds, right? So because there's custody, approval, let's say, chain integrations, visibility into positions, and so on. How does it work from an insider's perspective? And how, what were the biggest challenges of working on that case exactly?
So I would say the main operational risk that funds like that, well, I would say there are like a few gaps that these kind of organizations like Heritage had when we spoke to them. Because if you think about these players, like they are like traditional players in the space, it's not like a new player. So probably when Utila comes and speak to someone like Heritage or it or every other player that has been in the space for a few years already, they would already have like a wallet solution, right? Like an institutional one, right? But the challenges that they have are um, are a few things. One thing I would say that old custody providers were designed in a way that it's still not very simple for them to add support for new blockchains. Okay,
Mhm.
even EVM chains. Okay, even EVM chains that's supposed to be easy to add, you still need like to be dependent on your custody provider to actually have engineers sitting and adding support. Okay, for I don't know Tempo tomorrow by Stripe, right, or for any new EVM chain. Not talking about like much more complex ecosystems like Canton. Okay, which is like getting a lot of institutional interest in recently, right? So I would say the general flexibility of traditional wallets to support ecosystems, standards, etc. was a big pain point. Okay, I'm like Karataj. I'm pretty advanced in my stuff. I see new opportunities. I need a wallet provider that can adapt to this new ecosystems relatively fast. And Canton, okay, it's a great example for some of them. Okay, so I would say that's one main gap that we managed to solve in Utilize. We built a system that can support EVM chains out of the box, which is very unique in the market. We can add support for new ecosystems in a matter of like a few weeks, which is a big
Mhm.
selling point. Okay, the second thing is what I mentioned before, is the ability to have like a policy engine, but not only policy engine. I would say in general, like security features that are designed and built for on-chain interactions. Okay, so on-chain interactions are very risky. Okay, because transactions actions are actually being created out of the wallet scope. Okay, like in the traditional world, you are coming, you have your own wallet, you are initiating a transaction, you control like the entire flow. In smart contract interaction, when you start doing things with like the apps, the transaction is being created out of your wallet system. It's being created on the smart contract side, and you need to trust it. Okay, and you need to make sure that there is no bad actor in the middle before you do the action or even after you do the action. Okay, because you can even just deploy money into a smart contract and everything was fine, but then there is like an attack going on, and you need to get out as soon as possible before your money will get drained, right? So I would say having a new set of security features designed for on-chain interactions are critical for these kind of organizations, whether it comes to being able to set the right permissions and policies on internal users, on who can interact with like this smart contract and who can interact with this like different function, and which a specific function and which parameters can be used while calling to this function. Okay, these things are critical. Okay, when it comes to interacting with smart contracts. Another thing is like, okay, we are now going to do like an action. We need to simulate what's the implication of the action. Just to want to we want to make sure that the smart this smart contract call is doing what we actually want to do and not something else, right? So you do need also this layer that is actually simulating you what you are going to do, which is pretty missing from a lot of traditional wallet providers, and we have it embedded into Utila, right? So you can actually see whenever you interact with a smart contract, what's the implications of the action when it comes to the different balance changes or transactions involved. Um, and another piece is the integrations that we've been built with on-chain security products like Blockade and Hypernative, and Exagate, etc., which are, designed to prevent situations when you are like already like sitting like inside a smart contract and there is an attack going on and you want to get your funds as soon as possible. Imagine you sleep at night, right? And something is happening. So, you can actually set rules on, okay, call me, okay, whenever like we identify an attack, um, and I just want to do things manually or just automatically do it, right? Like you do need like a wallet provider that is like heavily embedded with these solutions, which are becoming like a must-have for every asset manager doing more stuff on chain. So I would say that's like the second area and where we differentiated well. The third area is, I would say, everything regarding yield. Okay, yield is a big topic today when it comes to digital assets, and organizations appreciate the flexibility of having different yield options on assets that they manage. Traditional wallet providers were built in a very not flexible way when it comes to yield. Like you are tied to one or two or three like staking providers, and that's all. And maybe one day some of them got hacked or something, and then you cannot use them anymore, and then you are just tied to another one. In Utila, we took a much more flexible approach, a bit similar to the way we support blockchains. That we are very flexible way, and we support a wide range of yield products. And if I'm, let's say, a fund and I hold some tokens even, and I don't do anything exciting besides that, I just hold these tokens, but I want to stake them and I want to get the best APY, and there is like a specific staking provider that can gives me this APY. I need a wallet provider that can actually support this kind of staking provider as well, right? So I would say that's like the main things that make these organizations actually, and that's also the case of Carthage, adding Utila next to what they already had, because as the market was evolving, these new gaps were critical, and that's why we've been seeing like a lot of situations where Utila is not necessarily being used by someone who just started like a fund um, or a project. It's actually being used by those who have been there for a few years already, they already have their wallet system, but this wallet system was failing to support these new things happening in the market.
There was another interesting case called Bima, and they are a platform building financial services directly on Bitcoin. So it's just the way I understand it, Bitcoin DeFi introduces a very different or just different operational environment compared to Ethereum-based ecosystems. Please correct me if I'm wrong based on your experience of working on this. So what new infrastructure challenges you had to face when such an institution or institutions start deploying smart contracts like systems and lending mechanisms around Bitcoin?
Yeah, I think when it comes to Bitcoin in general, BitcoinFi was pretty big maybe 2 years ago, more or less. I think
Hmm.
things changed a bit since then. Generally speaking about Bitcoin, and not necessarily just a Bitcoin DeFi, which I believe it today is like less strong than it used to be. I think that when you support Bitcoin as a wallet provider, you need to take care of other things besides of like key management, right? So you need to think about how do you manage UTXOs and how do you do it like in scale, which is by the way is another gap that we've been seeing in like other wallet providers. I cannot mention the name of this client, but one of our biggest client is doing a lot of stuff on Bitcoin payments actually, and this player has a lot of scalability issues with like and this is maybe connected to what I mentioned before, um, and traditional wallet providers not being able to support large scale of of operations, and it means also the ability to support like large amount of like UTXO management, which is the way Bitcoin addresses are working, right? And I think in Utila we did a lot of a very good job about it. Besides that, there are still things that we are working on adding as we speak, like Taproot support when it comes to Bitcoin, which is like critical for supporting deeply Bitcoin DeFi from our side. And this is something that I believe will be ready in the next few weeks. Generally speaking, I think the DeFi world is still pretty fragmented. Okay, it's like a very challenging world to solve. The apps acts in a very different way across different ecosystems. We added recently DeFi support for Stellar, for example. I think we are the only ones doing it today in the market. It comes with new challenges. Okay, like if you support DeFi on Solana, it doesn't mean that it will be easy for you to support more DeFi on Stellar. The way DeFi works is still pretty complicated in many cases. And I think overall we managed to do a good job in creating like more like a unified user experience across like different blockchains when it comes to DeFi. Um, I think also when you are a wallet provider, one of the challenging questions you always need to face is okay, like which ecosystems I should support and focus on and which not. Of course, I want to support everything, but in the end of the day, supporting an ecosystem means like it's not just a job done one time and that's all, right? Like it's actually continuously supporting this ecosystem as it evolves from beyond just a token, smart contracts, new standards, etc. And it's a lot of betting work as well. Okay, like there is a new ecosystem. Okay, like Bitensor, Canton, some other stuff, right? Like Utexo. Like okay,
Mm.
like do we believe this gonna be big? Okay, do we actually want to put the efforts there? Okay, I think there are many questions that every wallet companies that they've been asking themselves. That's like one of the most complicated issues because I have friends who worked on like adding Terra support a few years ago in one of the main wallet providers, and they did it for 4 months, and then 2 weeks after it was released, Terra collapsed, right? And no one is using it anymore. So some things you can never see, some things it's more easier to see when you see like much more institutional adoption. You see like tier one investors, you see volumes growing. Usually it means that that's an healthy ecosystem that you should bet on. But when you see some questions when it comes to the participants, the investors, the team behind, I think that's why you should be much more careful with adding a support for a new blockchain.
It's important to also touch upon the yield topic just a bit more, maybe, because it's really interesting to learn more about the other case, for example, in One Capital and in general, right? Because they were DeFi focused hedge fund managing over 100 million in assets. Now, when a fund is executing arbitrage yield strategies, multi-protocol trades across chains. Where do operational problems typically emerge, right? So, what are the biggest challenges in these cases, especially with the consideration of yield strategies?
Again, I think that the main challenges are mostly when first of all, it's operational risk, right? Like when you want to deploy something to somewhere, you want to make sure that there is no any bad actor in the middle, which is something that is
Mhm.
happening more and more. Staking providers, look at what happened like with Kiln a few months ago, and I think Swissborg was the client that was influenced, and it was a lot of money behind. And it's like yield, right? Like that's drift, right? Like another yield protocol. Like most of the attacks are around there. You need to be very careful on the actions you are doing there. You need to understand the context of everything you do. You need to make sure that what you do is actually what you were thinking that you are doing, and there is no like any one bit even change behind it can influence the entire action. When we look, we try to reverse engineer the Bybit hack that happened more than a year ago. We actually found out that it was just about one bit being changed.
Mhm.
When it came to calling the relevant like function in the smart contract, which can actually be a big disaster for an organization. So understanding the context and having the right simulations and the same and having the right security measurements before actually doing an actions are critical for this kind of organizations. The same as having a real-time monitoring on every position, in order to avoid situations when there is like an ongoing attack, the protocol is getting hacked and all of your funds are getting lost, right? So having this like real-time monitoring, connecting to alerts that can, based on the rules that you set, can actually help you get away. For example, you are on a flight. Okay, imagine you are the operations person of the team. You are just That's your lucky day of the year. You are on a long flight from Singapore to New York, and
Mhm.
in these 15 hours there is like an hack in one of these products. Okay, you cannot do anything, you don't have internet, um but you do need to act. Okay, so you probably want the ability to basically do things automatically when there is like an ongoing a risk alert. Okay, like over was, so you do need like different capabilities that also fit like what you are doing today, right? Or the way you want to operate as a company. You are sleeping tonight, so you want to make sure that something can call you when you sleep. I actually met people who never fly because of that. Okay, they cannot fly. Okay, because they are like afraid that there will be something happening just on the moment that they are going to be on the airplane, right? So I think these kind of things, they seem crazy, but having the right operational um, um, workflows, having the right on-chain security products plugged into your wallet provider can make your business like a successful business or like a disastrous business. Okay, and that's something that's this market is cruel sometimes. Okay, you can do all the right things, but you miss one thing and that's all. So I would say organizations today, especially sophisticated one, they understand the importance of these tools. Unfortunately, some organizations, they don't understand until they have a hack. Okay, and then actually they call us. Okay, so after like the Bybit hack, um especially last week with like drift, right, we do see actually some of these organizations who have been sitting on, like, let's say, old traditional wallet systems coming to us and say, okay, we must have like something like Utila. Okay, so I think sometimes that's the only way to educate.
When you observe how institutions interact with digital assets today, right, what still feels unnecessarily complex, and where do you expect the most meaningful infrastructure breakthroughs over the next few years?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that in general, blockchains are still pretty fragmented. Um, there are all the time the questions about consolidation, etc. I do think that um, in the end of the day, we'll go to a world where there will be like blockchain blockchains that are more like specific per case, and for every use case, you will have like one, two, three, like main blockchains where like all the volumes or most of the volumes are going through. So because also the needs are a bit different, right? Because the needs of like a company doing payments, for example, uh, um, from the blockchain side are different when it compared to like an asset manager like running yield strategies on chain, right? Like, so I would say you will start seeing more blockchains focused on like a use case, whether it's like privacy, whether it's like scalability and payments, or like Canton privacy, or Leo, right, or um, Tempo for payments, for example. That's another example, and you will also see like other blockchains specializing in like specific use cases. While today, like Ethereum is just trying to focus on everything.
Mhm.
I don't think I think the EVM family is still will still be like a strong player in the ecosystem, but you will still be see like um, blockchains being built purposely for a specific use case. Another main friction point is gas management, which is very painful for those who are building, especially stablecoin operations in large scale. I think in Utila we did a lot of work, and I will be a bit careful what I say, but I think we built the best gas management experience when it comes to that supports all the major blockchains that we've seen, where we've seen volumes, whether it's like Tron, that works with like energy, which is like a huge friction point for everyone building like um, stable coins in a large scale operation, Solana, EVM chains, of course, etc. Um, gas is still like a pretty complex thing. Like you think about gas, okay, I want to move USDT from X to Y, but now it means that I need to get US dollars and then get like a stable coin and then convert the stable coin into like Ethereum or Tron and then like to send it to the wallet. Like you do need to do a lot of actions behind. It's There is a lot of friction. We built a lot of Lego blocks that are solving it. So I think that's like another piece, and of course, like blockchains like Tempo that were like designed to solve gas can also have it already embedded, right? So I think solving gas and having blockchains purposely built for different use cases, I think that this is something that we'll start seeing more and more. Privacy, I think it's still like a main issue. Many organizations are only now starting to think about it, and I think this will be a big trend in the coming years. That's the main things that I see from my side.
Where can listeners learn more about Utila and connect with you? We're approaching the end. Oh.
Um, I would say the best way to learn about Utila is to visit our website, our blog post, to follow our LinkedIn page. I think almost every day we have an exciting update. I think also with AI today, right? It's the the amount of like new things we are adding to Utila every day is amazing. Every developer is working like 10x faster. Like as a company, we operate in a much more efficient way, and I think that's the best way to learn and get updated about the recent developments on our side. So I would say that's one thing. A second thing is that we are also attending a lot of events. So we have a pretty busy schedule. We are going to attend every large crypto event and all the major fintech events in the coming months, whether it's like Money 2020 and Consensus and Stablecoin, etc. So also, I think following our pages, and we always like share where we are attending. We have some cool side events, which is also a good opportunity to meet the team face to face.
Bentzi, thank you very much for joining and walking everyone through the architecture infrastructure behind institutional digital asset operations. That's very interesting. And and to everyone listening or watching, like, subscribe, or follow both of us. Follow Utila, learn more about their recent developments, and share this episode with someone curious.